I've got a couple of follow-up questions I'd like to ask. Talked on so many different things, and sort of this fundamental separation we have from our knowing ourselves as true spirit beings. But you know, so many people feel broken physically, emotionally, psychologically. They might not even call it spiritually at this time. They might not have awareness. You know, psychology talks about adverse childhood experiences. And there's all this work, historical and intergenerational trauma because of sexism, racism, etc. And a lot of people, you know, find their identity is based on labeling or stereotypes that's been put on them, or their history or their goals. So it's challenging for people to maintain a self-respectful sense of identity, and particularly some of the things that happened the last couple of years, people can often feel out of control or fearful. So we've already touched on it, but can you say a little bit more about what can help give people deeper meaning, more authentic sense of identity in their lives? A little about that.
Sure. Thank you, David. And yes, it's true that we're so caught up in our external form. And of course, it begins with even things like possessions. I hold my identity in terms of the possessions that I have. Do I have a little house? Do I have a big house? What is it that I have? Again, my car, that's very precious in terms of identity, but it's also the way that others identify me. Is it just a little four-wheeler thing that I drive, or is it a wonderful machine that I have, or a monstrous four-track thing that I drive? What is it that I have? And so I have to ask myself the question, does my identity really depend on this? And when you go into profound silence and you really ask yourself this question, you realize that that is completely out there and you are in here. And so these things really, really don't matter. And then you come to the question of position. Well, am I the chief engineer? Am I the chief financial officer? Am I the CEO? And if today I were to lose that, where would I be? Well, I would still be me, surely. That was the label on the door or on my desk. And taking that identity away from me doesn't make me any less of who I am. I am who I am, without that label or with that label. You know, you mentioned additional administrative head and this and that, and people ask me, what does it feel like? And I say, no different. Really, it doesn't, because it's something out there. It's a role that you play. It's not really who I am. I am who I am, and I'll do whatever it is I can do, and I'll stay the same as I am internally. And so labels really don't matter. But after you've dealt with these externals, then you come down to things like gender, and a huge amount of confusion about that in the world today. And people trying to find their feet in terms of identity on that level. And then you come to something which is absolutely inseparable from me. My skin and this gem and this color. Or even on an inner level, my beliefs. Am I a Catholic? Am I an Anglican? Am I a Hindu? Am I a Muslim? And a Jew? And each one of these has so many different branches and divisions and subdivisions within their own. And you find that there's even a quarrel between all these different factions that actually belong to the same branch. And we very rarely think about the fact that it's not just the branches that we belong to, but we actually belong to one tree, the tree of humanity. And in spiritual terms, I would say that the Supreme Being, the source of love and light, is actually the seed of the whole of the human tree. And whichever branch it is I belong to, it doesn't matter, so long as I stay connected with the seed. And so exploring all of these things and then coming to that awareness of that inner being that I truly am. So you're that shining light, even though there's so much difference between us and we're continents apart, but I see you as a soul, as my brother. And so all the barriers and the borders and the divisions dissolve, and I can connect with you as my brother, really, truly. So it's been lovely for me to see how the Brahma Kumaris family has extended out into the world from just one country, India, but today 120 countries, people of colors, people of different races, people of different cultures, but yet coming together, especially when we get together in Mount Abu at our spiritual headquarters, when we come together and we see this rainbow family. It's so exciting and so beautiful. And we haven't been able to come together because of COVID, but we're hoping to come together again soon. But also, of course, cyberspace has given us the opportunity to come together through this. So I hope my answer wasn't too long.
No, your answer was not too long at all. It was very insightful and I think very helpful in reconnecting with that spiritual sense of who we are. And I think when you talked about, you know, the possessions, the position, those external things, I won't say they're easy to break attachment to, but they're things we can work on. But it's also that sense of identity that comes from gender, race, ethnicity, culture, etc., that we can't really as easily separate ourselves. That can be really challenging, particularly I think when people can label us with detrimental or discriminatory things, as you shared from your own experience, you know, during the 70s that time. Many people are working on this kind of healing. Not all from a spiritual perspective, but it's often. And sometimes I'm finding in the psychosocial literature, people are talking about if you've been discriminated against, been oppressed, then build back your self-respect. There's this really important step of reclaiming your history, maybe reclaiming your own language. It may have been taken over by English or colonial language. Reviving cultural connections and going back to the past and your ancestors and building on. And Dr. Joy DeGruy, who I think you know of, you know, we need to healing also advance the culture of marginalized groups. And we need to have spiritual connections, but also make some of those systemic changes that you were talking about that really, I guess, start within. Could you just say a little bit about those kinds of approaches, how you think they might help with this fundamental challenge of reconnecting with ourselves as spiritual beings?
Absolutely. I agree completely that retracing of history is vital. I'm seeing how India, Africa, other parts of the world, South America. When the colonial people went into these countries, their attitude was very definitely that we are superior, we are civilized, and these people are savages. They really didn't give themselves a chance to understand the traditions of those cultures and the very rich tradition that each one of these different continents and places had. They came with that fixed attitude. They are savages and we are cultured, which couldn't have been further from the truth. And I can get quite passionate about this subject because, of course, India has a tradition of 5,000 years, and India was civilized when people in Europe were still living in caves. That is a historical reality now that was covered up for hundreds of years and is only now being exposed and coming to light. So I think we live in a very, very interesting time of transition of history even. Look at the history books and how they portrayed different parts of the world. And the reality of what we know is more closer to the truth today. We don't know the full truth as yet, but we're a little bit closer coming to that. And so, yes, to reclaim my history, to reclaim my ancestry, to reclaim that original civilization to which I belonged, it's definitely a way to bring back my own dignity and self-respect and hold my head up high. And not to allow all the false histories that have been written in the Western world, especially, to change my attitude to myself. How do I see myself? It's a very, very basic thing. And the way I see myself is going to determine the way others see me also, because this is the vibration that I emit. I am less. I don't have that history. I don't have that culture. Yes, I believe that I was a barbarian in the past. No, not true. Absolutely not true. And so when I come back to the awareness of the tradition that I belong to and the beauty of that tradition, yes, important to again honor that at this moment and again allow that culture to thrive and be able to claim it as my own. Very, very important. I agree with that completely.
Thank you. That's very powerful to think about, you know, the process of colonialization and acculturation and how that's been detrimental to so many people, and it needs to be overcome. But it's all based on the attitudes we have about ourselves and the attitudes we have about others. And it reminds me of, you know, you were talking about the early 1970s. It reminds me of one of those Bob Marley songs, you know, we have to overcome mental slavery. That's just as powerful as of the things people might experience in the external conditions, but we really need to work on how we think about ourselves and how we think about others. That's helpful. Thank you.
I want to bring in another very important ingredient within this. And I'm reminded of the statement that Nelson Mandela made when he walked out of prison, and how between one set of doors and the next set of doors, there was a space that he had to walk through before he was out in the open. And as he left one set of doors, the conversation, the dialogue that went on inside his head was something like this. I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember the exact quote, but something like this, that if I don't forgive, I will still be in prison, though physically I'll be free, but I'll still be locked inside my own prison within. And so when he walked out of that second gate, he came out with that determination to create that state of forgiveness. And so sometimes we don't realize that forgiveness is part of my liberation. And so to fight for justice doesn't ever work. It's not violence that can lead to harmony and peace, though we think that that is what is courage. No, the greater courage is forgiveness and being able to have that inner dignity that no one can take away, because it's something that's deeply rooted within my own change of attitude and consciousness. And so I think that I'm reclaiming my history, I'm reclaiming my culture, absolutely, but not through violence. I think that this is a big, big misunderstanding that has created a huge amount of division. Okay, so one side is wrong, but you mentioned something very interesting. When I've been oppressed and there's someone I can blame as being my oppressor, then usually we find that the one who is oppressed, given an opportunity, becomes the oppressor also. And again, there's a lot of evidence about this. And so if I've been oppressed, can I put my hand on my heart and say, I know what that feels like. I'm never going to do that to any other human being. But it takes a lot of deep insight into my own spiritual awareness of who I truly am to make sure that I don't take that step of becoming an oppressor. And it happens whether it's children of alcoholic parents or violent parents, and the pattern continues through generations, but it also applies to things, race and religion and so on, of course. So that determination to hold on original state, which is who I truly am, and not to allow myself.
Sorry about that, just a little technical interruption there. Thank you for that. Lots to think about, and an important recognition of the power of forgiveness, and to be true to our own hearts as we try to make change in society. It reminds me of that, phrase from Gandhi, that we need to be the change ourselves that we want to see in the world. Just one other quick question, and again, it's related to the idea of sustained change. Often spiritual groups can be accused almost of sending positive energy and sending love and light. Really is making a difference in the world today. We need accountability, we need policy change, we need institutional transformation. We can, hear about those things going on all the time. Even the situation in Canada, some of religious organizations that were sharing these spiritual messages often committed some of the atrocities that are being revealed. So can you share a few thoughts from your experience of what is that real value of sending prayer and light and love and thinking positively? Does it really make the change we need?
In 1994, there was to be the first democratic elections in South Africa. And I happened to be there a little while just before. And I'd been going to South Africa since 1982 with a brown skin, which was interesting. But I managed to claim my British passport, which allowed me entry into the country. With an Indian passport, I couldn't even go into the country at that point. But many people were asking me to come. So I got to know people on a very intimate level. But in 1994, when everybody was excited that there was going to be the democratic elections, just a little while earlier, there were riots. And the riots, of course, caused great concern that South Africa was headed to a bloodbath. the different interfaith religious organizations got together and decided that they would hold prayer and meditation vigils. And this happened all over the country. Different groups at different times, sometimes same times, but it was a wave that spread across everywhere. And in my mind and my heart, I'm convinced that this is what averted a bloodbath, because on the external levels, all the situations that were coming up were absolutely ready to plunge the country into that sort of situation. But it changed. It became a very peaceful election and transition to the elected leaders. Of course, then Madiba, Mandela came in charge. I've seen that happen on an individual level, where individuals have been facing difficulty and they've asked for prayers and meditations to help them through that. And everybody's vibrations together have supported that individual, and some of those individuals I've been seeing on the screen. And if there's an opportunity, I'm sure they'll share their experience in their small groups. But it made a huge difference. It shifted the consciousness of people, it shifted illnesses, and things change. We underestimate the power of vibrations, but the vibration of fear is infectious. The vibration of the power of prayer can also expand across a huge amount of space. And spiritual people don't say sit on your backside or sit in a cave and meditate. We're activists also, but not fighting with guns and bombs and weapons, but definitely very, very much carrying forward the flag of nonviolence and peace with that absolute conviction in our hearts that this is what is going to bring change. Violence begets violence. Where do you land up? It doesn't take you anywhere at all. But if what I want is peace, then the path that I follow is going to take me to the destination that I choose. And so the path of peace and absolute truth in my heart and justice in my heart is going to carry me to a world of peace and harmony and truth and justice. You can't shake me from that understanding and belief.
Well, thank you so much. And you shared with us so many practical experiences from your many years of being involved in this work, that it rings very true that these vibrations do make a difference. Thank you for being with us today, and you've certainly given us lots to think about as we continue in the rest of the program. And yes, much wishes of gratitude for sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I'll request you one more minute to silence together and just going deep within the self and finding that sacred space within and holding that awareness of the inner being that I am, the being of light. I keep that awareness as I come back into interaction and engagement, but I stay connected with the being who I truly am. Thank you. Om Shanti.